The Islamic State has continually rampaged innocent Middle Eastern cities, forcing men to their death, selling women into slavery, and subjecting girls to sex trafficking. This is actually happening in our modern day. Various human rights organizations, NGOs, and nonprofits have brought awareness to the issue. One of the most common practices of the Islamic State is to separate the women into two categories. This is absolutely absurd, but those two categories are shocking. What are the two categories? What does ISIS want to know immediately when looking at a woman? Is it whether they're educated, or what's their social status, or what certain needs they have? Maybe these two categories, but no. The women are separated after being captured by ISIS. They're separated into categories of virgin and non-virgin. So virgins go here and non-virgins go there. And this behavior and the atrocities of ISIS are no doubt surprising to our Western mindsets. Now, contrary to what we in the West believe and we view ISIS as terrorists, ISIS members are actually proud. They think they're doing their slave women favors. How so? By buying them and bringing, according to them, the truth of Islam. So, my question today is there a textual precedence to compare their actions with the early era of Islam? Is there an actual connection between ISIS and Muhammad? If there is a similar practice dating back to early Islamic days, then one may conclude without hesitation that the Islamic State's version of Islam is actually credible. And not just credible, it's valid within the context of Islam. But only, I repeat, only if the sources are credible Islamic sources. So what do I mean by that? I mean you cannot quote Jesus, you can't quote Buddha, you can't quote Lao Tzu to make any case. So I can only quote the Quran, and by the way, within context, and the actions of Muhammad himself. So I bring to your attention the story of Safiya bint Huyay. According to Islamic history, Muhammad killed her husband, her brother, her father, and all her people in the Battle of Khaybar. After murdering Safiya's brother and her father, Muhammad had sex with her. So how can a man have sex with a woman after he just murdered her family and slaughtered her people? In addition to this, she was a newlywed. Safiya is on record in the hadith saying that Muhammad was the most hated man to her. Why? Because he killed my brother, my husband, and my father. It's commonly accepted within Islam that Muhammad married women, doing those women a favor, married women, widows, and orphans to allegedly help them survive in the harsh Arabian culture. But how could this be beneficial when Safiya hated Muhammad for killing her family and destroying her people? So, with some common sense and a little bit of context, one may conclude that this was nothing short of rape. ISIS has also sent women en masse to slavery and rape, often claiming that they're following the example of the Sunnah, the exemplary life of Muhammad. The tribe of Bani Mustalak knew these types of events. According to Sahih Bukhari, the Islamic source for hadith, and the biography of Muhammad, the Sirah Nabawiyah, many, quote, many of the young men were killed and their women were taken as booty. The captured women of Bani Mustalak were raped by the Muslim warriors. But wait, right? Because you can't judge a religion by the followers. So what does that mean? That means you can only judge the religion based on its holy book and the founder. So just because the women of Bani Mustalak were raped, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's Islamic, right? But not really, because Bukhari informs us that these rapes were 100% approved. Muhammad, he gave his consent that they be raped. So these actions are almost identical to what the Iraqis and the Syrians are experiencing at the hands of ISIS. Another important fact is this, that this was not a self-defense action from the Muslims towards Khaybar or Bani Mustalak. This was an aggressive raid led by Muhammad, the founder of Islam, who is the primary example for ISIS, and they will tell you that, by the way. It is also widely accepted that in that moment, there was another girl who was taken as a slave girl. Specifically, Bukhari tells us, on that day, the Prophet got Juwayriya. So who was Juwayriya? Juwayriya was a beautiful young bride whose husband was killed by the Islamic army. Now get this, a modern day 7th century soap opera in the times of Islam. Aisha, Muhammad's youngest wife, had a professed dislike for Juwayriya because she was evidently beautiful and she would be competition. She might take Muhammad's affections, right? Juwayriya was seeking help from Muhammad to be set free from a forced marriage to a guy named Thabit. So, here was Muhammad's solution. He says to her, "Would you like something better than Thabit?" She said, "Yes." "So what is your alternative, Muhammad?" The alternative was this. He says to Juwayriya, no doubt she was scared, afraid, and petrified. He says to her, "I will discharge you now, and I will marry you." Basically, you don't have to be a slave of Thabit anymore, but I'll marry you. Of course she agreed. What is she going to do? They're being oppressed and taken over. Here, in this moment, the daughter of a Jewish tribal chief is now a slave of war, due to an unprovoked raid by Muhammad. It's interesting also to note that at the time of this event, Muhammad was 58 years old. She was a young lady. So, by default, Muhammad encourages child brides, polygamy, abuse of prisoners of war, although these were not really prisoners of war, they were victims. So here's my question to any logical, level-headed person. If you, Muhammad, are to be the supreme example within the Muslim world, how could your actions not encourage ISIS? Some believe that ISIS is just a lone wolf organization that is evil and has no valid claim to Islam. Innocent women and men have been killed, throughout history for multiple reasons. But the astonishing thing about ISIS is the amazing correlation between Muhammad and their actions. And this has to be taken into consideration because we cannot ignore it. If we do ignore it, it would be unwise for us. It would be careless and insensitive to the victims of ISIS. But you and me, we're not going to turn a deaf ear anymore. You're going to continue on to the next video and you're going to help raise awareness by using the hashtag and joining the discussion.